What occurs when an African-American woman from Alabama enters a tech company worth billions, and nobody realizes she's their incoming chief executive? At 7:45 a.m., the automatic glass entrance of Holston and Myers Tech Solutions parted silently as Tamika Holloway entered, carrying a dark blue fabric bag, wearing a simple gray outfit that fit her well, and comfortable worn shoes, more familiar with dirt paths than office floors. Her hair was styled in a neat low bun, with only a delicate silver necklace as her accessory. She appeared unremarkable, or so most observers believed. A businessman in a dark suit briefly looked up from his device as she passed, his gaze flickering momentarily before returning to his screen. Two female employees by the lifts exchanged knowing looks, the subtle kind people assume goes unnoticed, but Tamika caught it. "How did an intern get in so early?" someone whispered behind her. Tamika remained unfazed. She'd experienced worse back in Monroeville, Alabama, where her high school administrator once advised her to set realistic goals after she mentioned her Howard University application. She surveyed the modern, sleek lobby with its glass and polished stone walls, a towering plant in the corner, and a digital display showing company announcements. This was the place she'd been hired to repair, to transform, to restore, but she wasn't there to make a statement or demonstrate her authority. Not yet. Today required observation to witness people's true nature when they assumed she was insignificant. As she approached the security station, a middle-aged man intercepted her path, holding coffee in one hand and dry cleaning in the other. "Great, you're here early. Please hang this in the marketing storage area and be careful not to wrinkle it this time," he said. Tamika paused. "Pardon me." The man didn't look at her. "You're the temporary worker, right? Cynthia arranged for you." Before she could respond, he placed the hanger in her hand and departed without another word. Tamika examined the garment, an expensive navy suit that had nothing to do with her purpose there. She smiled gently and laid it carefully across a nearby chair. A young blonde woman with earbuds observed the entire interaction with amusement. "You're meant to take it upstairs," she commented. "Third floor marketing department." "I'm not the temporary worker," Tamika responded calmly but clearly. The woman seemed surprised by her confidence, but before she could reply, the elevator opened. A heavy-set man in a dark green shirt stood inside, drinking an energy beverage. His eyes met Tamika's, then looked down at her footwear. "Are you lost?" he inquired. "If you're here for administrative onboarding, human resources is on the second floor." "I know my destination," Tamika said, stepping into the elevator and pressing the button for the 12th floor. He raised his eyebrows. "That's the executive level." Tamika simply smiled. "I'm aware." What she hadn't yet discovered was how extensive the corruption was within those walls, and how soon she'd need to reveal her true identity. The elevator opened with a gentle sound, revealing a quiet hallway with tinted glass offices and mounted displays. The 12th floor felt different, colder, more costly, as if success was supposed to reside there. Tamika stepped out purposefully, but within 10 paces, she felt eyes upon her again. At the hallway's end, 4 men gathered near the coffee machine, laughing too boisterously for the early hour. One noticed her and nudged his colleague. "Is she lost?" One chuckled quietly. Tamika ignored them and walked directly toward the large glass door labeled Executive Conference Room. The receptionist, young, with perfect makeup and manicured nails clicking on her keyboard, rose to greet her. "Hello," the young woman said, glancing at the bag on Tamika's shoulder. "Are you making a delivery?" "No." "Okay, are you with the catering service?" Tamika smiled politely. "No." The receptionist hesitated, visibly uncomfortable. I apologize, but this area is restricted to executive personnel only. Tamika leaned in slightly. I understand. That's precisely why I'm here. Before the woman could respond, a middle-aged man in a fitted suit approached, phone pressed to his ear. He stopped abruptly upon seeing Tamika. You're early, he said, lowering his phone. This was Alan Brewster, the chief financial officer, who had worked at the company for over 12 years. When the board had appointed a new CEO, he had anticipated receiving the position himself. Tamika offered a small nod. Good morning, Mr. Brewster. He blinked, startled that she knew his name. And you are? Tamika Holloway. Alan stared, then forced a laugh. Oh, I see. You're from the firm conducting the audit? I'm your new chief executive officer. Silence fell. The receptionist's hand froze above her keyboard. The hallway suddenly felt airless. Even the men near the coffee machine had stopped talking. Alan's smile wavered. I'm sorry, what? Tamika retrieved her company identification and displayed it without speaking. Her name, photograph, and title, Chief Executive Officer, were shown in bold letters. A moment passed, then another. Alan cleared his throat and stepped aside. Of course, right this way. Inside the conference room, an extended walnut table stretched wall to wall, surrounded by leather chairs with two 70-inch screens mounted at either end. Tamika placed her bag gently on a chair near the table's head. She didn't sit yet. She turned and looked at Alan. I'd like to begin at 9 a.m. precisely. Please inform the executive team. He nodded stiffly, still processing. Yes, certainly. She watched him leave, the door slowly closing behind him. For a moment she was alone in the room. She exhaled deeply and quietly. In some ways, this wasn't unfamiliar territory. She'd spent her entire life entering spaces where people didn't expect her presence. But this time wasn't about fitting in. It was about taking charge. She sat down and opened her laptop. Across the room, someone knocked. The door opened slowly, and a woman in her 50s entered. Auburn hair, red-framed glasses, sharp eyes. I heard what occurred outside, she said without introducing herself. You handled that skillfully. Tamika looked up. Thank you. The woman approached and extended her hand. Janice Greer, head of legal. Tamika shook it, firm, confident. You're the first person today who didn't question my presence here, Tamika observed. Janice smiled. That's because I've already reviewed your background. Impressive record. You built an agricultural technology company in rural Alabama from nothing and sold it for 8 figures before age 30. I don't need to examine your shoes to know you're qualified. Tamika laughed softly. Janice tilted her head. Are you prepared for the opposition? I grew up around serpents. Wolves don't frighten me. But Janice understood what Tamika didn't yet realize. This wasn't merely a cultural issue. It was personal, and some individuals didn't want her there at all. By 9:03 a.m., the conference room was filled. 11 executives, excluding Tamika, took their seats, some with laptops open, others with expensive pens and notepads they likely never used. Every seat was occupied except the one at the table's head. Tamika entered without fanfare and calmly took that position. A few heads turned, a few phones illuminated discreetly under the table. One man, tall, mid-30s, arrogant, whispered something to his neighbor. They chuckled. Janice sat 2 seats to Tamika's right, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room like she was observing a card game. Good morning, Tamika said clearly. Only half the room responded. She allowed the silence to extend for a beat. Let me spare you the formalities. Yes, I'm the new CEO. No, I'm not here to exchange pleasantries and smile at quarterly projections. I was brought in because this company is hemorrhaging talent, losing contracts, and quietly suffocating under its own arrogance. And from what I've already observed, that assessment is accurate." That captured their attention. A woman near the table's end closed her laptop slowly. A man in a purple shirt leaned back, arms crossed, eyes narrowing as if he was calculating something. Tamika clicked a remote and displayed the first slide. Numbers, charts, canceled contracts, employee turnover rates, anonymous HR complaints spanning 2 years. Everything in black and white. She wasn't there to impress them. She was there to awaken them. "Let me be direct," she said. "This company doesn't have a revenue issue. It has a personnel issue, one that originates right here in this room." The tall man who had laughed earlier, his nameplate read Jason Feld, smiled and leaned forward. "With all due respect, Miss Holloway, you've been here less than 2 hours. Isn't it premature for such broad conclusions?" Tamika didn't blink. "You're correct. It would be premature if this were based on opinion. But I've spent the past 6 weeks examining your employee records, turnover patterns, internal communication channels. Yes, we accessed those. And the exit interviews you assumed no one read. I don't operate on emotions, Mr. Feld. I operate on evidence." The chuckle died in his throat. Someone near the door released a small breath that sounded like relief. Tamika turned to another executive, Emily something, Chief Marketing Officer. "You lost 4 of your top 5 creative directors in under 8 months. Do you know why?" Emily shifted uncomfortably. "They said they were pursuing better opportunities." "No," Tamika said. "They said they were exhausted from being interrupted, dismissed, and overruled by people with less experience but louder voices." Emily looked down. Tamika paused to let it register. "I didn't come here to make friends. I came here to transform a broken culture, and transformation begins at the top." Silence again. Then Jason snorted quietly. "We'll see how long this continues." Janice turned toward him. "Excuse me?" Jason raised an eyebrow, smugly. "Nothing. Just that we've had 3 CEOs in 5 years. The position isn't exactly known for stability." Tamika stood slowly and walked to the table's edge. "You're right. This position hasn't been stable, but I'm not here to occupy it temporarily. I'm here to secure it permanently." Jason looked away. Tamika scanned the room, making eye contact with each person individually. "If you're not prepared to rebuild, to listen, to grow, or if you believe I'm not the right person for this, now is the time to leave, because I'm not going anywhere." Nobody moved. Tamika clicked the remote again. "Excellent, let's begin." But while she had silenced them for now, she hadn't won them over, and some were already planning ways to remove her. Later that afternoon, Tamika sat in her temporary office, a wide glass cube overlooking the city, with a view that didn't match the chaos she'd just inherited. Her inbox was already overflowing. Half the executive team hadn't followed up on her requests, and a few had even copied her on threads where they were openly questioning her authority. She didn't need to read between the lines. The resistance wasn't subtle. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Janice peered in. "Are you decent?" Tamika smirked. "You sound like my aunt back home." Janice entered, holding a thick folder. "I thought you'd want to see this. Internal audit reports from the 2nd quarter. Nothing that will surprise you, but it's worse than what you presented this morning." Tamika took the folder and browsed through the pages. Inflated budgets, doubled consultant fees, vendor invoices that made no sense. "This doesn't look like mismanagement," Tamika said. "This looks deliberate." Janice nodded. "Some of it is. There have been backdoor agreements, departmental kickbacks. Nothing huge, just a few thousand here and there, but over time it adds up to 6 figures. Tamika closed the folder slowly. Do you think Brewster knows? He doesn't just know, Janice said. He's involved. Tamika leaned back. She wasn't shocked. Alan had been cold from the moment she walked in, and that coldness wasn't about her being new. It was fear that she'd discover too much. I can't terminate him without evidence, Tamika muttered. No, but you can investigate quietly. I can assist. Janice offered. Tamika looked at her. Why are you helping me? Janice shrugged. I've been here 10 years, watched this place decay from within. Nobody ever took action, but then you walked in and didn't flinch. That matters. And between us, she glanced around. I'm tired of pretending this is normal. Tamika smiled. All right then, let's get to work. For the next 2 hours, they examined files, reports, and flagged transactions. Tamika asked questions, took notes, and constructed a timeline. The deeper she delved, the clearer the pattern became. Senior staff skimming from budgets, manipulating hiring processes, and rewarding friends over talent. This wasn't just toxic culture, it was a closed circle. Around 6 p.m. she stood and stretched. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since breakfast. She packed her belongings and headed toward the elevator, noticing empty cubicles and abandoned desks along the way. The building was nearly silent now. As she passed the break room, she overheard voices, quiet, whispered, but clear enough. She won't last. No way. You saw Alan's expression this morning. He's already making calls. CEO or not, she's not one of us. They'll push her out before next quarter. Tamika didn't stop walking, didn't confront them, but she heard every word. In the parking garage, she sat in her car and stared at the steering wheel for a long moment. She thought about her father's hands, cracked, stained from years of working red Alabama soil, and how he used to say, "You don't remove weeds to be polite. You remove them so the good plants have a chance to flourish." She started the engine. But what Tamika didn't realize was that while she was busy preparing for boardroom warfare, someone had already begun one behind her back. The next morning, Tamika arrived early again. This time, no one questioned her at the front desk. No dry cleaning was handed to her, no smirks, just silence, like the building was holding its breath. She went straight to her office and found Janice already inside, waiting. "We have something," Janice said, tapping a flash drive on the desk. Tamika sat down, eyes focused on her. "How serious is it?" "Worse than we anticipated," Janice replied. "Alan's been approving inflated contracts for months. Most are processed through a shell vendor registered under his brother-in-law's name." Tamika's expression hardened. "That's embezzlement." Janice nodded. "And that's not all. Jason Feld, your friend from yesterday, he's been collecting referral bonuses under false identities. He paid himself 5 times last quarter. That's HR fraud." Tamika took a deep breath. She should have been angry, but honestly, she was ready. "I want a complete report, every name, every transaction. I want to see who signed what and when." "You'll have it by noon," Janice said. Then, hesitating, she added, "You might want to consider legal counsel. This won't go down easily." Tamika stood. "I didn't come here for easy." At 12:45 p.m., she called an emergency executive meeting. By 1:15, the same group of faces was back in the boardroom, some annoyed, others curious. Jason entered late with a protein bar in one hand and his phone in the other. "All right, what's the emergency?" he muttered, dropping into his chair. Tamika didn't sit. She remained standing at the front, holding a thick folder in one hand and a remote in the other. "I'm going to be very direct," she began. "Over the past 48 hours, I've reviewed documents and data that reveal serious financial misconduct by multiple executives in this room." A murmur swept through the table. Jason laughed. "Are we doing this again? What, you found a typo in someone's expense report? Tamika clicked the remote. A spreadsheet filled the screen. Names, amounts, dates, vendor registrations. Mr. Feld, she said, this is your name. And this, she pointed, is a vendor you claim to have referred on 5 separate occasions. The problem is that vendor doesn't exist, and the bank account it's connected to belongs to a fake LLC owned by your cousin in Tampa. Jason blinked. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Tamika turned to Alan. And Mr. Brewster, these contracts, 10 of them, were all approved under your authority. The receiving vendor was registered 3 months ago to an address belonging to your brother-in-law. Alan's face went pale. This is absurd. No, she said calmly. It's documented, confirmed, and already in the hands of external legal review. A silence stretched across the room, thick and growing. I'll give each of you an opportunity to speak, but understand this. I'm not asking you to explain this to me. You'll be explaining it to federal investigators. Janice stood now, placing another set of documents on the table. We've already suspended your company email accounts and revoked your system access, effective immediately. Your positions are under formal review. Jason stood up, voice shaking. You can't do this. You're not... I am, Tamika interrupted. I'm exactly who I said I was, and the board gave me complete authority to investigate and act accordingly. You didn't believe me on Monday. Maybe now you do. Alan tried to argue, tried to regain control of the room, but nobody followed. His voice echoed off the walls, landing flat. The others remained seated, quiet. Some stared at the table. A few looked at Tamika with something new in their eyes. Not resentment, not defiance. Something closer to respect. Tamika gathered the papers. If anyone else has something they want to confess, my door is open. But make no mistake, this isn't a threat. It's a fresh start. She walked out without another word. But not everyone was grateful, and one of them was about to make it personal. Over the next 2 weeks, Holston and Myers resembled a company holding its breath. Jason Feld's office was cleared out in a single afternoon. Alan Brewster was escorted from the building the next morning by security. No press release, no retirement speech, just a quiet walk of shame down the executive hallway. Word spread quickly. At first, there was fear, whispers in break rooms, instant messages that disappeared as soon as they were sent. No one knew what Tamika would do next. But she didn't bring in a wrecking ball. She brought in chairs. Literally. The following Monday, she rolled a stack of folding chairs into the middle of the main floor and sat in a circle with 20 staff members from different departments, technology, sales, support, even janitorial. No titles, no agenda, just people. I want to hear what this place feels like, she told them. No filters, no sugarcoating. If this company were a person, how would you describe them? A young man from IT raised his hand. Fake. An older woman from customer support nodded. Exhausting. Someone else muttered, clickish. They talked. She listened. No laptops, no phones, just notebooks and raw honesty. She started doing it every other day, different teams, different voices. She asked questions that no previous CEO had ever cared to ask. What does respect look like here? How do you know your work matters? What's the last thing that made you want to quit? Tamika didn't take notes to appear busy. She wrote because she was going to follow through, and people started noticing. Janice caught her one evening, long after most had gone home, rearranging the office space layout on a whiteboard. You're redesigning the floor plan, Janice observed. Tamika nodded. Nobody collaborates because the departments are all isolated like separate kingdoms. That's not a structure, that's a labyrinth. She wiped one corner of the board clean and added, no more corner offices. Janice raised an eyebrow. Even yours. Tamika smiled. especially mine. By the third week, the atmosphere was changing. People were no longer just observing her. They were following her. HR started receiving thank you emails from employees for the first time in years. Mid-level managers began requesting feedback instead of issuing orders. Tamika launched something called Open Friday. Any employee could book a 10-minute slot to speak with her directly. The first week filled up in under an hour. One conversation stood out. A woman named Letitia from operations entered, clearly nervous. "I don't really have a question," she said. I've never seen anyone up here who looks like me. Not just how you look, but how you carry yourself. I wanted to say thank you." Tamika leaned forward. "Letitia, you belong in any room you enter. You don't need my permission for that, but I appreciate you saying it." Letitia smiled. "Nobody's ever told me that." But even as the company began to transform, one email was making its way up the chain. An anonymous complaint accusing Tamika of discrimination and unfair termination, and the sender had connections on the board. By the time the complaint reached the board's desk, Tamika had already heard whispers. It came through a back channel, the kind Janice kept open in case the knives ever came out. "Alan," Janice said simply, dropping the printed email on Tamika's desk. Anonymous, but the phrasing, "It's him," guaranteed. The complaint accused Tamika of creating an atmosphere of retaliation, claiming her terminations were racially and personally motivated. It was written with just enough polish to seem official and just enough venom to sting. Tamika read it quietly, then pushed the paper aside and leaned back. They knew this might happen. That's why I documented everything, every meeting, every report, every approval. Janice nodded. "Good, because this isn't about the complaint. It's about who still wants the old system back." The board requested a formal review, nothing dramatic, just protocol, they said, but everyone knew what it was, a power check. On the day of the review, Tamika walked into the boardroom alone. No entourage, no lawyer, just a black binder under her arm and a calm expression that said she'd weathered storms before. 7 board members sat across from her. One of them, a silver-haired man in a blue tie, cleared his throat. "Ms. Holloway, we're here to discuss the decisions made during your first month. Some concerns have been raised." Tamika placed the binder on the table. "Everything's in there. Timelines, documentation, witness statements, legal counsel sign-offs. You'll see that every termination was based on verified misconduct." Another board member, a woman in a green blazer, leaned forward. "This isn't just about procedure. Some feel the company's tone has changed too rapidly, that perhaps certain voices feel excluded." Tamika's jaw tightened for a second, but she didn't flinch. "Let me be clear. This company has operated for years as an exclusive club, a place where a few people made the rules and everyone else kept their heads down. That's not leadership, that's survival. And I wasn't hired to maintain survival. I was hired to create change." Silence. She stood and opened the binder to a series of charts. Employee engagement is up 46%. HR complaints have dropped by over half. We've saved $1.2 million in misappropriated contracts. And for the first time in 5 years, we've retained our top engineering talent. She paused. "I'm not sorry if the tone has changed. It needed to." The room was still. No one looked her in the eye except for one board member, an older black woman who hadn't spoken until now. She leaned in and said, "We've waited years for someone to say that out loud." The silver-haired man cleared his throat again, this time sounding smaller. "Thank you, Ms. Holloway. We'll be in touch shortly." Tamika gathered her things and walked out with her head high. 3 days later, she received the board's official response. The review was closed. No further action. Her decisions stood. She didn't throw a party, didn't post a statement. Instead, she walked into the staff break room the next morning with a box of fresh donuts and sat at the table next to the interns. "Y'all like chocolate glaze or not?" she asked with a grin. A guy from analytics laughed. "I knew you were different." Tamika looked up. "Different doesn't mean temporary. I'm here to stay." But what stuck with people wasn't the shakeups or speeches. It was that she showed up every day, even after being doubted, humiliated, and challenged. And she never once raised her voice. A month later, Holston and Myers looked nothing like the company Tamika had first entered. The glass still gleamed. The titles on the doors were the same, but the energy, that was different. People spoke up in meetings who used to stay silent. Department heads who never interacted were now sharing ideas over lunch. Even the Friday all-hands, which used to feel like a funeral with coffee, had turned into real conversations, sometimes messy but honest. And every now and then, someone would stop her in the hallway, not to ask for a favor, not to curry favor, but to say thank you, not because she saved the company, but because she made it human again. Tamika never bragged. She didn't need to. Her presence was proof enough. You can be soft-spoken without being weak, underestimated without being unprepared, kind without being naive. Her story wasn't just about climbing to the top. It was about what she did once she got there. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't try to fit in. She saw the system, named it, and changed it from the inside out. And maybe that's the real lesson here. The world will try to box you in. It'll measure you by how you look, where you're from, how you talk, or what you don't have. And when you walk into that room, whatever that room is for you, there will always be someone who thinks you don't belong. But your job isn't to prove them wrong. Your job is to do the work anyway and let your results do the talking. Because when it's time for real change, the loudest voice isn't always the one that leads. It's the one that listens, builds, and refuses to back down. So if you've ever felt invisible, underestimated, or written off, just remember this. Keep going, keep building, keep showing up. Because one day they'll realize you were the CEO the whole time. Now it's your turn. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there might be walking into their first day, not knowing what they're about to change.